Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
So the other day, I literally strolled right into a gas station with a pistol strapped to my side. Full visibility, there it is, a
What?
45.
Okay.
And I pulled into that gas station off a 4-lane highway riding a four-wheeler. I'm on a four-wheeler with a pistol strapped to my side and some protective eye goggles I'm wearing.
Goggles and a gun.
And you know what? The lady behind the counter
She didn't even notice.
didn't even blink.
Yeah.
Didn't even blink.
Do you know
And
why?
Because I'm in Montana.
Because we're in Montana.
Hanging out with my parents. Born and raised in a state filled with freedom.
You know,
It smells of freedom and cow dung some places.
and countdown. Which you had the gun in case a bear came on your four-wheeler.
I did. I strapped a 45 to my side just in case I ran into a grizzly while I was up in the mountains.
That'd be a good story.
If I ran into a grizzly, yeah, if I survived it. Here's my plan. I was with my dad.
So you run off faster?
Yes. But also, I feel like if you have a grizzly coming at you and you have a gun, you don't fire until it's like 20 feet away.
Yeah, because
You have to be sure to hit it.
Yeah, and you piss it off.
Yep. You just hunker down on one knee, say your last prayer, acknowledge one of the terrible things that you've done that you've never told anyone, and then start firing, hoping that it kills it. Or if you've said something too horrible and someone was around, you hope the bear just takes your life completely at that point. So, anyways, we're
That's
here.
funny.
We're on a connect. We're hanging out. We're getting to connect together.
Oh yeah, this is one of our favorite places to connect to ourselves because there's so much nature and to each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really good for our marriage.
Is it?
When we travel to Montana, I think so.
I mean, that's not maybe my experience.
Okay.
Just kidding. I just kid you.
All you are is stuck in trauma brain from the 7 months we lived here, aren't you?
No. I love it here. I think it's really good. So I have a story about what we're talking about today.
Yeah, please go ahead. We're going to dive into a great episode for all of you couples out there
And
all of
singles.
you singles who are going to get married
Or date.
or date.
Yeah.
Sure.
Any of those. So I was actually having a conversation with some people the other day about things to look for when you're dating.
Oh, yeah.
What you want to actually pay attention for and to have like standards that you're hoping for. And I was giving them like some of the things I had with you. And I was remembering how every guy I dated, I would ask this question. I would say, what are you going to do if you find yourself attracted to somebody else? Like if we ever got married, what would you do if you found yourself
And to which
attracted
they
to
said,
someone
I
else?
would never be attracted to anyone but you.
They did say that.
Exactly.
And you know what I would say? I said,
Liar!
I felt that inside. I'd be like, you idiot. But
I mean, I can self-acknowledge I am not the handsomest man in the world. I'm handsome.
You're pretty handsome.
But I am not the handsomest man in the world.
Yeah.
And there's going to be other guys that are much more attractive and rich than me.
Okay, so I would ask them, they would say, no, I'd only ever have eyes for you. And I said, no, but if you did get attracted, like, no, I'd only have eyes for you. No, but just let's say that we had a really hard season. I would try to paint it out. They would never
Yeah,
get
you're
it.
trying to give them an out. Like, look, I'm going to let you out of your BS and give you a scenario where you
Yes.
could say there's someone that you could be attracted to.
Yeah, because to me, it's insane. The idea that you're going to get married and you're never going to be attracted to somebody else.
Yeah.
That feels insane to me.
No.
So I'm
Totally
like,
insane.
if you're involved in insanity, I don't want to marry you. So what happened?
If I'm not the most attractive guy in the world, I know you're not the most attractive woman.
What?
in the world. Yeah, it's true.
No.
It's true.
Take it back.
Do you accept that?
No.
Do you accept that? And so we know that there's much more attractive people than us out there.
That is not what I am saying, you idiot.
Well, what?
You idiot.
What I'm saying is that this person can't lie to themselves.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That is not a healthy conversation to have with a dating partner. Listen, there are definitely more beautiful people out there in the world than you. It's the freaking worst. You're the worst. You were not like that when I dated you. Okay, so when I asked you though, when we were dating or friends, whenever it was, do you remember what you said?
I don't.
Okay, you said this.
It was probably pretty straightforward and blunt.
Absolutely, but it was much kinder than what you've been saying in this podcast. You said, oh, if I found myself attracted to another woman, I would know that there were needs in my heart that weren't getting met. And I would look at what those were and I would figure out how to get those needs met. And I'd probably have some conversations with you about what was going on inside of me.
Yeah.
Where I was needing to be seen or heard or loved or valued or respected or connected to. Like you basically said, I would know that there was something in the connection that was missing.
Totally.
And then you kind of said the same. I'm like, well, what would you do if I was attracted to somebody else? And same thing, like I wouldn't take it personally. I would know that it meant that there was a breakdown in something in our relationship.
Yep.
So in today's episode, we want to kind of talk about, because I came into marriage with a how to not have an affair plan.
Yeah.
And we talked through it a lot because I thought, I actually feel like it's very easy. And I want anybody out there who's ever cheated, I want you to be able to listen to this episode and feel compassion for yourself and actually understand more about why you've done what you've done in the past.
That's great.
And because there's no shame in this, but I also want to peel back the emotional intelligence, because what I find is most people have never thought about this and they end up finding themselves in situations where they're in over their head instead of actually having the emotional intelligence to understand what's going on inside of themselves and other people so that they can make good choices that help them have thriving relationships.
And, you know, it's when it comes to marriage and affairs, it's not about, oh, I just shouldn't have an affair because that's a bad thing. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's about affairs are deeply destructive. And so anyone who's listening, who's had an affair would attest to like, no, it was really destructive.
It was really painful.
To somebody.
Yeah.
To me, to other people. There's always chaos and destruction that comes with an affair. And so part of loving ourselves well, me as an individual, part of loving Justin well is not having an affair on Abby.
Right.
Because if I actually care about Justin, I won't participate in an affair because I don't want to first and foremost just destroy Justin's world and cause him deep grief and heartache that's unnecessary. And then that transcends into loving other people beyond me. But when we don't love ourselves and we don't deal with our heart issues and self-care well, it leads to measures that create chaos and ultimately deep, painful destruction. So that's what we're trying to do, is help you love yourself and help you love others well by actually getting the tools that are necessary to not fall into those pitfalls.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of talk through what we'll say, some of the conversations that me and you had. I have had several times where I've been drawn to, attracted to other people in our marriage. I'll tell those stories and how it helped our marriage instead of hinder it. So there really is no shame. I want to start by saying this. There is a humility that I have about this subject where I don't think anyone's above it.
No, I don't think so at all.
Like, I think given the right circumstances, anyone could find themselves.
Every human being is susceptible to this type of the experience.
Absolutely. And so I think that's one of the things. I remember hearing a story that my pastor talked about where there was somebody on staff at a church who had an affair, and they had a meeting with like the leaders of the church. And the pastor said, who in this room could have done this, like could have had an affair? and nobody raised their hand. And then one person raised their hand. They're like, oh, if I was tired and we weren't connected and this and this and this happened, I could
that guy had to preface everything so that no one thought he was about to go have an affair in that room.
But what he was saying was
Totally.
like, given the right circumstances, absolutely I could. And the pastor was like, great, you're the person that's going to walk through this restoration process with him.
Yeah.
Because you actually have the capacity to understand. And I think lots of people judge cheaters because it's painful and it hurts.
Yeah.
But also, very few people understand the emotional dynamics. So we're going to start with the first thing in order to not have an affair is to be connected to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is whether you're dating. And I also want to tell single people out here, these are important things to look for in people you're dating, because it's going to help you be able to measure that.
Well, when you're connected to yourself, there's a couple different caveats to that.
Yeah.
But when you're connected to yourself, you have self-awareness. You know what's going on inside of you. You can articulate. You have language. When someone comes to me and they're like, I don't know what's going on in me. I don't know what I feel. I'm like, this is a recipe for disaster in so many areas of life. And an affair is one of those, because there are forces that are just driving them and they're kind of moving along with life, being bumped around and have no idea why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. If you don't know what pain is going on inside your life, your pain will drive you without you having a choice.
You're in the back seat.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in the subconscious pain. If you're not aware of what's happening with you, it will take you to get your needs met in the easiest way possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so being connected to yourself means I know what I'm feeling about my relationship with Justin. I know how our connection is. I know how I'm feeling with self-love for me. So I'll give an example for this, which was, I remember I started feeling drawn. Now, this is one of the things we tell people. As soon as there is so many levels before attraction. Mm-hmm. Like there's like, oh, I'm feeling pulled to you. Oh, I just want to be around you more.
Let me use language for being pulled to you. You might notice yourself being, maybe you are having text exchanges, DM exchanges on Instagram, Facebook or something where you're like, oh, I just really want to find out what's going on in that person's world over there. Oh, I'm really excited to find out how they responded to me.
Oh, I just had a hit of endorphins when they responded back.
Oh, that felt so good. I'm so excited to talk again. I wonder if we can have another conversation. And it's not just like, you wouldn't necessarily have those same emotions about your friend.
Grandma.
Or someone of the same sex, necessarily like, oh, that's my guy friend. I like hearing from him, but I'm not really super stoked to jump online super quick and find out like, did he respond yet? I've been waiting for him.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for me, it could be, I remember hearing one of the men that I deeply respect. He talked about this. He noticed that he was just happy to see his secretary when he would go to work. He just found himself looking forward
delighted,
to it.
like, oh, I'm going to see her today.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, oh, I find her so attractive. He hadn't started consciously thinking about like why he would like her or who she was. None of that. He just noticed, I'm feeling excitement. And so right away he went and told people about it. And for him in that moment, just telling people about it killed it.
Yeah.
Like just bringing it out into the open so it can't grow on the inside.
Yeah, and it's so key. Again, he was connected enough to himself to realize, I'm really excited to see that person in a way that doesn't feel normal. That I don't even feel that excitement maybe towards my wife.
Totally.
Currently.
Yeah, and then I've had other men who felt that pull that literally have to put somebody else in that job position. Yeah, because it's actually valuable. And I know so many people that are like, no, it's fine. I'll get over it. I'll just shove it down. But then like 3 years later, it has bit them in the butt. Right.
And shoving things down, like people, when you ask them, like, how did you deal with that? Oh, I just didn't think about it anymore. No, you compartmentalize it. You put it somewhere and it's festering. Yes. And so again, conversations, light, being shined on belief systems, feelings can just obliterate any problems you have.
Yes. Okay. Having a voice and being honest for where you're at in relationships. This feels like a huge key. I'm looking for people who when I hurt their feelings, they tell me that their feelings are hurt.
Yeah.
Who, when they're sad, they let me know, or when they have a need, they can communicate it with me. Why? Because then I know they're going to have a voice about the lack that they're experiencing with me, so that I can actually engage them in that. So let's say that you have a huge hole in your love tank from me, but you never tell me about it.
Yeah.
Then that hole in your love tank is going to drive you to find someone to meet that love need.
Yeah. If you're feeling lonely and abandoned inside of that space, you're going, I need this to be dealt with. And especially when you're not connected to yourself, I want to tie this back into even being connected to yourself. Please do. Because there's not just self-awareness inside of that, but when I am connected to myself, it means that I am attentive to my needs, my feelings. I give myself a self-care. Mm-hmm. I'm able to articulate, oh, what do I need? What am I tired? Am I wore out? Am I needing to go have fun today? Am I needing to converse about my emotions? And being connected to yourself, even in the sense of when I am giving myself self-care, there'll be times when Abby is in a place of pain, emotionally, physically, something where she doesn't have capacity and she doesn't have capacity to be connected to me, where she's like, I'm just barely surviving today because of some physical symptom. Yeah. And so for me, I'm able to go, yeah, but I'm purposely, filling my heart with things that help me to come alive, whether they're experiences, whether it's things that I'm exposing myself to, listening to, ways that I'm dialoguing with my own heart, ways that I'm purposely grieving and processing emotions. I am taking care of myself, and that creates a self-connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like I've seen you, when I can't meet some of your needs, you will actually, oh, I'm going to go on an adventure with this guy. Oh, I'm going to go have a heart-to-heart conversation with this person. Yeah. And you're purposefully getting your needs met in a way so that you're not just driving on empty. Because here's what people don't recognize. When you're not getting your needs met over and over and over again, and we can meet our own needs and we can have healthy relationships meet our needs. But when you live for, and it, different people have different tolerances. Some people can go for years and years and years without getting their needs met. Some people, it's a shorter time. Right. And then months. Eventually going long enough, you crack, you break in some way, shape or form. What I would say, it's like starving. Like love is like food. And so if you go without eating for a long time, you're much more likely to eat the cheeseburger that fell in the backseat of the car than you are if you're full. Like you're much more likely to compromise for just a couple bites of snacks if you're starving. And I've had so many people who have had affairs come into my office and very similar conversations happen across the board for a lot of them, where they're like, I don't know, I just went so long in my marriage and it was like that we were never connected. We never had deep, heartfelt conversations. I didn't feel seen. And it was just this one person felt like they saw me. They saw me. And because they did, I just decided in that moment, it felt so good to finally have someone see me. And there it went. Yeah. And the grenade went off. Yeah. And that's why sometimes affairs make relationships better, because people finally have a voice. And this is what I was saying, learn to have a voice for what's going on inside of you. Because if they could have said before that, I don't feel seen, we need to have a counselor. You could have avoided destroying each other. Yeah. If you can have a voice about it and put action to it, like we have to get this ironed out so that I can be okay. One of the things that just running kind of through my head is when we believe that our significant other is our source of life, our source of love, our source of value, that is a surefire way to find ourselves inside of an affair. Oh yeah, I was talking to a client the other day and was saying like, well, where do you get your needs met besides your marriage? And they were like, nowhere. And this goes for dating and marriage, but yeah, totally. She was married. She's like, nowhere. And I was like, so you expect for your spouse to meet all of your needs? And she was like, yes. And I was like, that literally is disaster. There's no way. You set your husband up for complete failure. And 1,000%. You're always going to be frustrated with him. Bitter, you're never going to be. But then there's the other people that their needs don't get met and they just compartmentalize it over and over and over again. Like, until one day there's an explosion. This is what happens. You shove your needs down, you shove your needs down, you shove your needs down, and then it all of a sudden shows up and you're completely selfish.
There is a lie in humanity that says, but it won't happen to me. It can't happen to me. I know across the board, I've had so many people where the flashing red light is like, dude, you're not getting your heart met and you're not facing these things inside of yourself. And always, 1000% of the time, give it enough time and you will have the breakdown. That breakdown may not come in the form of an affair. Yeah. It may come in the form of some other disastrous situation, but we will always, when we leave something unattended, 1000% of the time, it will come to haunt us at some point.
And so I think about people, like, I know a lot of people who are in relationships where the other person doesn't meet a lot of their needs. And so if you're in a situation like that, what that means is you have to be on your guard and aware of that. So I know, like, if I have this couple that I work with and he's not very good at compassion, he should get the compassion project. But he's not very good at compassion. And so she has this deficit in that area. So she has to be, so she's aware that if men give her compassion, it's going to feel really good. And so she has extra guards up in her heart and extra boundaries with men who are compassionate. She knows she has to be intentional in those areas because here's what happens with a lot of compassion. People are like, well, I'm not getting my needs met, so I am just going to let this guy who does meet my needs, and it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, there's no good that can come from finding your needs met.
I will say I watched someone closely who would consistently engage in his friends' marriages. So he had good guy, but he had friends who were married and his friends were so disconnected from themselves and from their spouses. And he oftentimes would be a surrogate inside of the space where he would connect to the wife and be their good best friend, and they would talk all the time.
The wives loved him because they got their needs met.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, what it did, it didn't lead to an affair in those times, but what it did do is it led to continued breakdown inside of the relationship because the spouses inside of that, none of them were forced to actually look at it. So it was very easy to go, oh, okay, that's great. You're taking care of my wife over here.
Her needs get
I don't
met.
have to deal with that. I'm so glad she goes out and hangs out with you and I don't have to do it. So what it did is it kept wearing away at the institution. And I watched some of those marriages actually come to a head where they fell completely apart and ended in divorce. All because they had enough medication to keep them numb enough until it just fell to pieces.
And what happened with that guy is because there was some blurry boundary lines that ended up costing him in other relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it affected things. So I don't ever want to demonize. Like I have lots of great guy friends. I super value Justin's guy friends. I'm not like you have to avoid the opposite sex with a 10-foot pole. We really believe in loving people well. I have great girlfriends
I like talking to that are like sisters to me.
Absolutely.
I share stuff with, and you have guy friends that are like brothers.
But we have self-awareness and boundaries around how we relate. So I'll tell this story. One of the boundaries that we have, we talked through this practically before we got married of how we would practically, and we came like with agreements that we would both show up. How will we practically not have an affair? And one of the ways was when I'm not feeling connected to you or my love tanks aren't full, I won't spend time engaging men.
Right. In any sense, in any depth. When you say depth. Engaging, you talk to guys, but it's not engaging them in any depth or heartfelt
or like long conversations, even long superficial ones. So I remember one summer when you were working in Montana and I was living in Redding, you were gone for 5 months and you were working crazy hours and it was really hard to, even when we could talk, have emotional connection.
Right.
And I remember one of the days we got in a fight. Now I'm back in Redding and your best friends are there.
Yeah.
And I'm close with them and honestly, they were very kind to me while you were gone.
Yeah, they're a huge gift.
Yeah, it was like taking care of me. Not like I needed to be taken care of, but just like they were kind.
Being available, yeah.
So we were going to go out sailing, all of us, one day, but me and you had just gotten in a fight and our connection tank was low. And so I just messaged them and was like, hey, love you guys, love sailing. That sounds super fun. I just can't do it today because of and I actually just said because I only hang out when there's overflow. I do not have deep connection with men when I am in need. And they felt so honored by that boundary because they didn't want to be pulled on in an unhealthy way. They didn't want to be meeting my needs while you were gone. They didn't want to be filling that spot in my life. And I didn't want them to. And so there was this place of, I was self-aware and capable of having a voice for myself. So I know that there's, even in business, like we have lots of men that I interact with in business. And so if me and you are in a fight, that's not when I'm going to go text them about things.
Right.
And like have a random life conversation about things.
Right.
So it's like timing. There's a value on timing where when I feel like I'm not full with you, I'm going to guard my other relationships.
Yeah. And also process with close friends and find out what is going on inside of me. What can I do to get out of where I'm at? You're deliberate and I'm deliberate, to engage friendships and go, hey, I've even, gone to my guy friends and been like, Abby and I are like in a really bad place right now. We're so disconnected. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm sad. I end up getting to grief points. I cry.
Yep.
I feel bonded to my male friends even inside of that process. And I'm like, oh, I have these brothers who are with me on this journey and will be with me long term. And they help direct me back to like, hey, you're not seeing this properly. You need to have these conversations with Abby. Here's what you're missing. Oftentimes when we go to the opposite sex inside of marriage to kind of like get our feel goods, that opposite sex person isn't usually challenging us. I'm not saying ever, but usually we go to people who we're not sharing like, here's the problem with my marriage. And then they're telling us, you need to go talk to your wife about this. No,
you need to work on your stuff.
So you're not
telling the sympathizers.
Well, they're sitting there listening to us and maybe engaging it and liking that they're getting connected to and that they feel powerful potentially. Like if I go to a woman, well, Abby and I are bad, who isn't part of our friend network, who isn't one of our sisters, our family, that's deliberately there to tell me, hey, you need to pull your head out of your ass and go back and do this.
Yep.
Oh, you're right. I do need to do that. There are people of the opposite sex that I easily could go to and they'd feel so great. Like, oh, Justin's talking to me and processing his emotions and I'm making his life better.
I'm valuable because I have something to offer him
and
right now.
And that fills their tank, their value tank. And and that's a situation you don't want to get in. Usually they won't go, hey, you're an idiot. Go talk to your wife. This is where you're failing her.
Well, and I do want to say that, like, I have friends, and I'm lucky enough. I started this as a young kid because I knew that I had such deep issues with men. Like I would say, like, addicted to finding men's approval my whole life. And I didn't actually do it the common way, which was through having sex with everybody. I did it through the like, I'll be your sister. But I'm going to win approval. And I knew that but I could feel that there was such a crazy pull inside of me. Yeah. That I started processing everything about that pull when I was a teenager with my best friends. Like, hey, I'm feeling, because I could get like, just track like where my vision was like, I have to get this person to approve of me. And I knew I could easily compromise myself in this need being so strong. And so I started processing. And so I built a habit of knowing whenever things were going on inside of me with men, and then bringing it all into the light, but bringing it to the light with people who, one, didn't freak out. So they weren't like, you slut.
You didn't get slut shamed, huh?
Totally. They weren't like that. But they also weren't like, it's fine. Do whatever you want. Do what feels good. Use them to build your self-esteem. Because that's honestly could have done that so many times when I was younger. Just used men to meet my needs.
Yeah.
Not in any way to value and love them and respect them as human beings. And so because of that, I have friends, and when I've processed things inside my heart with them, what they will say is, oh, totally get it. Understand where you're coming from. I know this is like a big wound that you've had to work through. And then they'll say things like, where is it that you're feeling powerless? Where is it that you're needing to get your needs met? What is this actually representing? And how do you deal with the root issue? I don't have any friends that say, you know what? You deserve to follow your feelings. You deserve to do what feels good to you. Because they know that what feels good to me won't actually feel good to me.
No. It's like the person who is struggling with diabetes, and it just feels really good to eat a chocolate bar. And a loving friend goes, yeah, I know for a few seconds that would feel good, but that's going to kill you. Someone who loves you is willing to like go, yeah, great. Thank you for sharing. I can see why. But here's how that's going to affect you. That's what love does.
Yeah.
Is it brings balance. It doesn't shame, but it challenges, and it calls us to a higher place.
And my friends genuinely want me to get my love needs met well, and they know that that won't be the answer.
Yes. Very
They know
aware
that
of
that will never fix it. And so that's one of the reasons we have the Connected Life, is we're trying to create cultures of people who understand that we are always driven by our pain underneath the surface.
Yeah.
Not by just, oh, I just want to cheat. Oh, I just am unsatisfied. Oh, I'm just selfish. Like, those are not the truest things about us. The truest things about us are we're all longing for something.
Yeah.
And if we can have relationships that empower us to go after what we really need. Oh, I actually really need love. Not that I need another guy to affirm me.
Yeah, totally. And again, like what you said there, one of a surefire way to not have an affair is to acknowledge my pain, deal with my pain. 100% across the board.
It's actually one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast now. This is a talk that I've given for years and years and years, how to not have an affair. It blows people's minds because most people have never emotionally, intelligently thought through how it happens. This helped me because I was terrified my whole life of marrying somebody who would cheat on me. And then when I started recognizing like there's actually practically things you can do, it made me feel so much safer. And it doesn't mean that it is foolproof. You can never control things to not happen, but it does mean that there's a lot more safety that you can intentionally engage in. But now I lost what I was saying. Do you remember?
I don't.
Oh no. This is part of my ADD. So when we were making a plan, pain is one of the things that drives us the most. And this is why I remember now. This is why I wanted to do this podcast now, because everyone's of humanity is in so much pain.
And it's easy to really make really destructive decisions right now in your world to try and deal with the fact that you lost a job, you felt trapped inside of your home, or felt trapped inside of the situation that's happening, feeling scared, overwhelmed, all these things.
Yeah. What happens is I can't tell you how many people have messaged me in the last couple weeks being like, I just want to move. I'm not satisfied with where I live. My community doesn't work. I'm like, that's everybody's feeling like they feel trapped. Yeah. It's a global feeling. Yeah. Moving is not the thing that's like, if you want to move after we're out of this season, great, do it. And I do like that people are reevaluating, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, we are all in a lot of pain. And I know people in pain want to find something that is an endorphin hit, want to find something that gives them hope, want to find something that empowers them to feel like they're alive again, to give them passion. Like I want to avoid the current pain that I'm in.
Yeah.
And even just flirting with the idea of a different person helps you feel like there is a place that that you have like a fun little place in your head.
Yeah, fantasy. So fantasy, recognizing what fantasy is, because a lot of people are driven by these fantastic scenarios. They create this world inside of their head of how life is going to be better, especially when it comes to affairs occur because of a fantasy.
Yes.
1,000% across the board. 1,000% across the board.
Yeah.
You've created an alternate, you don't really know a person. You haven't gone and lived an in-depth life with the person. You have created an idea, an illusion of who they are, of what they can make you feel.
Oh, I would say like before I was married, I was addicted to the fantasy part of dating. I would meet a guy, I would make up who they were in my head.
Yeah.
And then I would make up what being loved by someone like that would make me feel. And so that fantasy, then I would date them and then I would slowly find out they weren't who I thought they were. And I'd feel like, oh.
Well, I think something that we realize once you get into deep relationship with someone long enough, you realize all human beings are crappy.
Totally. It's so true.
You're like, oh, you have all of your triggers and your messes and your insecurities. And wait, I thought that this was great. And I thought you were so wonderful.
Oh, yeah. And so when you're in a committed relationship, you have the full truth about someone, and then you're comparing that to a made up idea of someone else. And that person's always going to win because you can make them up.
Absolutely, 1,000%.
I will say, so I'm an ENFP, and ENFPs
the Myers-Briggs.
on the Myers-Briggs, they are known for loving possibilities. It says that in their thing. And so,
is that why you married me?
Because you're the best possibility.
You're like, there's so many possibilities. He could be a good guy one day.
That's funny. So I'm aware, like, oh, my personality could easily love finding different possibilities in romance. And so I'm aware, like, oh, that could happen. So I watch it, and I've actually taught myself how to de-fantasize people. So maybe I see, and I actually have had to teach this to so many of the people that we work with in our consulting business, how to pop the fantasy around people. It could be a boss, it could be a significant other, it could be whatever, but like how to learn to not put people on pedestals. And so let's say that I'm feeling maybe just drawn towards this guy who feels really powerful. So I'll tell a story. There was a while ago in our marriage where I felt drawn to this guy. Again, I caught it before I was letting my mind wander, like, oh, he's so handsome and oh, he's so good at everything. Before that spot is where I caught it. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling drawn to him. Why? So I had a conversation with you about it because we don't feel a lot of shame around this because we're aware it's not me being drawn to him doesn't mean you're not a good lover.
Right.
It means there's
it has
something
nothing to do with me. And if I don't have insecurity inside of myself, I can just be like, oh, okay.
Let's find out what's going on
there.
Yeah. And so so when you started asking me questions, I started telling you like, well, I feel da 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 da. And you're like, oh, it sounds like he feels really powerful. And then I was like, yeah. And then you were like, so where do you feel powerless? And as soon as you asked me that, it was like all of the draw to him was gone because I was like, this is about me. This is about me feeling powerless. This is about me wanting to attach myself to somebody who feels powerful so that I don't have to learn how to be powerful myself.
Yeah.
And so I had to go on the journey then. I didn't have to, that actually ended the attraction. But in the past, if I'm feeling drawn to somebody who's powerful, I have to look at their life and be like, where are all the areas if I actually was in relationship with them that they would feel powerless? They actually don't know how to have conversations with their wife. They might be powerful in business and I might be drawn to that because I'm trying to be powerful in business, but they don't know how to do this. They don't know how to do this, where I can actually start to look at the things that they can't do.
Right.
So that I don't have a false idea that they are great. And so if you're feeling a fantasy about somebody, first of all, admit it. Just admit, I've made up that I love who this person is. I had a girl who would do that with celebrities. She just made up who they were and how perfect. And so I was like, you need to actually go research them and find out things you think could be their problems, that they could have triggers, that they could have issues they'd have to work through, because it is helpful in seeing people all as equals. Everybody has their stuff. I've learned that the most I've met incredible people who everybody wants to know and everybody wants to be in relationship with. And I've met them and they have incredible flaws.
Yeah. There's not some perfect princess or knight in shining armor that is like this entire package.
Yeah. If somebody besides you married me, they listened to the Connected Life, they'd be like, wow, she's really cool.
Incredible.
She knows so much about emotions and she's super freaking hot.
I like the way you slipped that in there.
But then they married me, they'd be like, oh my gosh, you're a pain in the ass.
Yeah, train wreck.
Totally.
I mean, not that I think you're a train wreck. I'm sure they would, though.
Yeah. But so if you have a belief that everybody has areas that they are powerless in, everybody has pain, everybody has flaws, everybody has stuff showing up, then you can begin to equalize people.
Yeah. So part of that, I want to add the idea of most affairs happen inside of the context of powerlessness. I feel powerless to get my needs met. I feel powerless to get healing in an area. I feel powerless to be heard inside of this relationship that I'm inside of. And oftentimes affairs feel like fantasy. It's like when I used to, have suicidal ideation. That's where I would ideate or think over and over again about suicide.
Right.
And it was like this idea, this fantasy in my head of how I ultimately would have the power to finally take power back over my life, or have the power to show people how much pain I'm in, or so fantasy is this place we go where I'm feeling really powerless in my life. So now I'm creating a world inside of my head because I can make it up in my head. It doesn't cost me anything to make up that fantasy inside of my head, but I suddenly feel powerful because I've done something in my brain, but I haven't acted out and actively had to make powerful decisions. Yeah. So one of the big things is if you feel yourself drawn to having an affair, you start asking yourself, what do I feel powerless to right now? Do I feel powerless to having a voice in my marriage? Powerless to fixing something inside of my marriage? Powerless to fixing something inside of myself? Powerless to overcoming something in my world, in my business, in my place of work? Yeah. Where am I feeling powerless inside of my life? And that's going to start highlighting some really big, probably difficult areas that need to be tackled.
Well, and that's where I think it's worth having a conversation there. Hey, I'm feeling so powerless. I'm concerned I'm going to have an affair. We need to get help.
Right.
We need, something has to change. I don't want to compromise, and I'm going to work on managing me, but also we need to work on this together.
You know, speaking of that, being powerful, and part of figuring out how to be powerful saves us from affairs. Like, I've had so many people who are like, I talked to my spouse all the time for years and was like, we need to go to a counselor, and they never wanted to do it. And I was like, well, what did you learn in counseling? Crickets. Crickets. I was like, oh, so you never proactively went to counseling? Well, they didn't want to go. No. I'm asking, what did you do about you? Did you go to counseling? Well, no. Okay, there you go. You've lived your entire marriage being powerless to making decisions on how you could heal, how you could grow. And then you've made a villain out of your spouse and made it their fault. And then you went and found a way to be powerful, which is you created this fantasy about this other person who would work out well with you, which I want to talk about vilification.
Okay.
So vilification is a surefire sentence to affair death, which is my marriage dies and I go have an affair because I've vilified the person across from me. So what we do inside of marriage is we have escalating amounts of pain.
Or this could be like committed relationships too. It doesn't have to be just marriage. Marriage,
committed relationships. But we end up having a series of events that happens where we continually have some form of pain inside of the relationship. And we begin to point fingers because we want to figure out, if I can figure out who the villain is inside of this, then I can distance myself from the villain and I can make my life all better.
Yes.
So what we begin to do is we built
The problem is outside of me.
The problem is outside of me, and I have progressively growing bitterness and resentment inside of my soul. These barriers that I build towards me and the person who feels like they're inflicting all the suffering on my life. I'm gonna go, it's you, Abby. You're causing me problems. If you wouldn't do these things, I wouldn't have this pain and these problems wouldn't be here. I don't like the way you behave. I don't like how you do that. And I keep building a case. It keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the bitterness and the resentment about you not changing so that I can be better off builds to such a degree that I go, this is the villain, and I need to find a hero in my story, a hero that will be loving, a hero that will be kind, a hero that will listen, a hero that will save me. And so we go to look for a hero to solve the problem with our villain.
Absolutely.
And so what happens inside of that situation is that all of a sudden we fumble around and we go, I've been having an affair with this person for 3 months. They're this hero. They don't judge me. We have these great sex romps or these great conversations. Oh, and they're so perfect. And I feel so connected to them. It's because you haven't had to walk anything out in life with them.
Right.
And the same way that you made a villain out of your spouse is the same way they would eventually be the villain in your story, because you have been living a powerless existence.
Right. And so the goal is, what do I have power over? I have power. There's so many ways that I can get my needs met. There's so many ways that I can take care of my heart. There's so many ways that I can get healing, regardless of if my partner does or not. Right.
And there are some people who have gone on and left marriages and found themselves in successful marriages with other people who have different temperaments that they like, oh, we connect differently.
Yeah.
But across the board, when I've talked to a lot of those people who made those transitions out of marriages ended up falling into things like counseling.
Yeah.
And they ended up going, oh, I botched that
things.
Previous relationship. Yeah. We need to figure out how to counsel. We need to figure out, all of a sudden, they're unloading all the mess that they had before, and they're starting doing the foundational principles that they never implemented into their marriage.
Yeah. And that's why we're kind of wanting to encourage people before you hit the breaking point to get help, before you hit a crisis, to be able to do something that makes your life better. I remember one of the guys that I felt drawn to, it happened a couple years ago. So I immediately told, now not every relationship, some people have a history with cheating that is so painful that they wouldn't be able to hear.
Right. They can't even hear conversations about stuff like that. They go into such trigger mode and shut down, and they're not bad for it. They just don't have capacity. And we go, okay, you don't have capacity for this.
And so you need to have a conversation with your significant other. Can you, if I'm drawn to somebody, what capacity? Should I do? If I'm drawn to somebody, should I go tell these friends or should I tell you? Or both?
One of the things that will happen when conversations like that come up is a person will initially be like, oh yeah, totally tell me. And this is a side note. And then when the person tells them, they have a very punishing, shaming, explosive response. And that's pretty counterproductive.
Yes.
And going to tell the person that they can't trust you.
Yes.
And so if you do have that scenario happen and you realize, oh, I told him I could handle it, but I didn't handle it well, you need to come back around and be like, I'm sorry. I thought I could. I can't. I actually want you to process over there with someone else, because it's only going to ultimately shut them down in the future anyways if you explode like that. So you'd rather just have them get good community in place to have those conversations.
Absolutely. So what were we?
Well, what we were saying is, and I want to add this. So being able to build into your life deliberately relationships where you go have open communication. If your spouse does not have the capacity, or your relational partner doesn't have the capacity, going, okay, who are the key people that I will dialogue about this stuff with?
So I went to Pizzi because I could feel myself being drawn towards this guy, and I tell her about it, and she does her thing, which asks me questions, and we end up, this was years ago, we end up realizing that he was like a 9 on the Enneagram, so even keeled, so kind, and just go with the flow, zero anger in this human, passive. I mean, I would have not been able to ever, without the fantasy, when the fantasy is gone, that would have never brought me any joy.
And you would have chewed him up and spit him out.
But so I, listen, I love 9s though. That's not, I'm just saying about this specific one.
No one's thinking and no one cares about your 9.
So she's like, describe him, and I describe it. And she's like, that sounds like the opposite of Justin's personality. And I was like, She's like, it sounds like he wouldn't really have much anger. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that makes me think that you might be having a lot of pain from Justin being so triggered easily, so high stakes, feeling like there's like a lot of like, you're being drawn to this guy who's so even keeled, he doesn't feel anything. That is the opposite of Justin, who back then there was so much more trauma that you had and you triggered a lot.
Right.
And so there was this thing inside of me that was like, okay, I actually have pain from you being so angry.
Yeah.
And it showing up all the time and me not being able to protect myself. And so I came to you and actually said, we have to do something about this because I can't, like, it's affecting me. And so I think being drawn to somebody is great information. That's why I never shame people for it. I'm like, no, that's good information. Let's find out what your heart is looking for. Because attraction is that our heart is desiring, we want our needs to get met. So people can be attracted to all kinds of people that they don't really want to be with, but it's because of the illusion of a need getting met. Mm-hmm. And that's where all affairs come from, which is I think I'm going to get my needs met from somebody. Yeah. So then we dove into counseling in that season, and we went after, like, I, up until that point, wasn't aware how much it had shut me down, your anger. Yeah. And so what I'd like to say is have a plan. Talk with the person you're dating or the person you're married to and be like, if one of us gets attracted to someone else, what are we going to do? And then part of the plan should be, we understand that this is about our own pain, our own needs. Be somebody that's proactive about dealing with your pain. Have good boundaries. Like, one of the things that I've done is, I remember when several times when I'm around guys on a regular basis, I'll have a DTR with them and I'll say, hey, I'm really happy and I get excited about people. I had to give this spiel when I was single as well. I'd be like, I really love cheering people on and I really am excited about people's lives, but I need you to know that that's not me being attracted to you. And here are the ways that I have boundaries with you. I had to do that as a single person, but I do that as a married woman. So if there's men that I'm around on a regular basis, like consistently, let's say that there's, like Marcus, he's one of our consultants and we see him a lot. So I had a talk with him where I said, here are all the ways that I'm going to set boundaries to protect our relationship so that it's never in a place that's a problem. I'm always going to tell Justin things that I talk about with you. I'm not going to have long, secret, drawn out conversations with you. I'm not going to have secrets with you that are separate from Justin. I am going to not come to you when I feel disconnected from Justin. Like, I'm going to I will process my heart. If anything does come up in my heart, I will process it and set healthy boundaries with you. I
want to throw something in here. So a lot of people might be listening and think, that feels terrifying to randomly have that conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Or that feels like it would make things awkward, or I feel shame about that.
Yeah.
But that conversation, having that early on before any potential weirdness or anything else happens, just being able to be like, I had such an open, direct conversation about how I manage myself and forced a conversation with the opposite sex to happen about that it was like, oh, we've so blown the door off of that. If there's any other conversations that I need to have, like, oh, I just can't really talk to you today because of X, Y, and Z. It's very easy. It doesn't feel shaming. It doesn't feel difficult. Because a lot of times, if you don't have the bigger conversation early on when there's not a problem, you'll feel shame and condemnation about having to have the little conversation. Like, I don't think I can really talk to you today.
Totally.
And they're like, why? What's going on? And you feel disconnected from your husband or whatever it is. And so it just have it once in a time of peace, in a time of ease, in a time of connection with your significant other. And then it's really easy.
Some of you don't need to ever have a conversation like that because you never relate to people of the opposite sex, or you are cold to everyone. So you're fine. But
you are dead.
I'm very warm. So the other thing that I have done is, because I didn't do this when we first got married, I had so many boundaries up. I would process, we had a guy that we were best friends with, and I would process my boundaries with you. And I felt like my relationship with him was in a great place, but I never told him that I had boundaries with him. I never told him that I was protecting our relationship from ever being unhealthy. And I also never demanded that he think through it. So somebody came to him and was like, well, what are your boundaries with her? He didn't have any. And he immediately was like, oh my gosh, this relationship's unhealthy. Yeah. So ever since then, when I have the conversation, I also like, and you can, it's not weird if you're like, hey, I love my spouse. When I'm around people of the opposite sex, I always have this conversation. I've done it so many times that it doesn't feel weird because you're like, I just do this with everyone. It's not because you're attractive or unattractive. Do it with your unattractive friends and it'll be easier. But so I always ask them, what are the boundaries that you're doing to honor my marriage with Justin? Like that eventually comes up. So one guy said, I purposefully bring up Justin in conversation a lot when we relate because that makes it feel like we're all, and I was like, cool. I didn't feel like I needed it or didn't need it, but I liked that I was like, oh, you're intentionally making sure that this is a healthy dynamic for us. Yeah. And I really like that. And actually now I do that sometimes with my guy friends. I like keep you in the conversation because it makes it feel safer. Yeah.
I've even, there's some girlfriends of mine where I've communicated with them some form of encouragement, or I've said to them, I've complimented them. Yeah. I've even complimented them like, hey, you know what? You're really beautiful and stuff like that. And I've even said, even in those compliments, like, hey, please feel free to share this with your husband and let him know that I shared this. Like, I have no problem with that. Please feel free to share him with that. I just want to say that. And that's pure of heart. Yeah. You know where I stand on stuff. And so even things like that, I've clarified where I stand on stuff so that someone doesn't create a fantasy even about me. Now, I'm not overly like vigilant or afraid because people like, it's pretty clear how I present myself. It's never like, hey, but there are times where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do that. And I'll even check in even with girls or women who are married who are friends of mine. I'll be like, hey, how's your husband doing? What's been going on with that? How is he? Tell him I said hi, please, or whatever. And I'll even throw that in there because I love the idea that that person will go dialogue with their spouse that, oh yeah, I had a conversation with Justin. Justin said this and whatever. And they're having that exchange. And I'm like, that's great.
The other thing that there's two more things and then we'll wrap this up. The other thing that one of the guys said is, I won't do long texts with you, especially late at night. Like I won't do stuff back and forth. Right. And again, like for me, I'm like, I'm okay with, I'm not going to have long texts with my guy friends regularly anyway. That might be like hit or miss, like some random times I have a conversation, but that's not going to be a regular thing. But I thought that is very self-aware, and that's him being self-aware. He was single. That's probably how he manages himself with other women who he's not wanting to date, is I don't want to lead them on. And so there's this self-awareness of, I want to honor the people around me. So I'm watching how I relate to them. Yeah. I'm not like, also, if there's a man that I can see doesn't have a good marriage, I'm going to be way more guarded with him.
Oh, totally.
Way more guarded. And that's happened to me before. I am very warm and affirming and kind. Men who have bad marriages, I put way out at a distance.
Yeah. I've had women who talk to me where I can tell they have a really bad marriage, and then they'll kind of share stuff. And I know that they're feeling approval inside of a conversation with me. And I'll be like, I'll actually turn them back to their marriage and be like, hey, what are you going to do about these areas where this is going on? How are you going to go handle that with them? Right. Just they're not people inside of my office or anything. They're just people. And I'm like, I'm really going to challenge you to be powerful and go engage that part of your marriage where there's disconnect inside of it. Because if you guys aren't feeling alive right now, then you're going to create problems for yourself. Like I actually challenge people when I see it.
I love that. The last story that I wanted to have you tell, do you remember when you were drawn to another girl?
I remember one of the times, the only one that stands out was we were having exchanges where there was a lot of laughter. She had a background where she had brothers inside of her, brothers, and she related to men really well, guys really well. And we just like would banter and laugh.
Yes.
And there was so much laughter and connection inside of that. And I could find myself being like excited for the next time I would see her. And it wasn't like I wasn't sexualizing her. It wasn't even going down some big road or anything, but I was just like, oh my gosh, so-and-so's here. I can't wait to go talk to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is happening here? Why am I so excited? What are they meeting inside of me? Because I felt very like the aspect of fun and related to specifically in those ways, even especially because of the way she related to her brothers, left me going, oh, I like being around this person. I'm like, that I have a problem with that. I'm getting really too excited about going and being around this person when I see them.
And do you remember what you realized it was?
I can't remember.
It was, I remember. You recognized it was probably like 2 years into being married. And you were like, I'm grieving that I will never get to flirt again.
Oh, yeah.
That I will never get to have that new exciting thing again, that I will never. And that's actually one of the reasons I tell people not to get addicted to dating.
Yeah.
Because in marriage, you miss those hits.
Yeah.
Like the endorphin hits of a new person and winning them over and the excitement about it. And so I just wanted to, I thought it was such a good thing. So once you recognized that, you went and you grieved it.
Yeah.
And you were like, and you acknowledged it, and then it took all the steam out of it.
Oh, absolutely. I was like, oh, it's so-and-so. Like, I didn't have those same emotions, and I still would have funny conversations here and there when we dialogued, but I didn't feel any sense of pull about it. I was just like moving on with life.
The last thing that I'll say is a lot of people have affairs to avoid rejection. They want to reject you first. They want to feel in control, and ultimately they're just trying to protect themselves. And so everything goes back to what is really going on inside of you and how are you trying to meet those needs. This is why we created the Compassion Project. We talk through in depth, hey, here are all the needs that you have.
Yeah.
All of the behavior that we don't like about ourselves comes from trying to meet our needs in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
But what we often do is we shame ourselves and we shame our needs instead of learning to have compassion on why we have those needs and then learning how to meet those needs in healthy ways. And
I would say that in the pursuit of not cheating on other people, not having affairs and stuff, I would say Compassion Project is actually vital to that process and giving you and equipping you with the proper tools to live a healthy existence, a healthy relational existence inside of marriage or relationship. And you can go to stumblconsulting.com and there's a button in the up in the top for the Compassion Project and click on that and get a hold of that. And I would just recommend going and getting it and watching it with
your partner.
With your partner.
Yeah. And
so that you guys can process like, oh, what we'll do is it'll create bonds. It will not only help you understand yourself better, but walking through it with your partner will help you to bond together and be able to articulate what's going on in your world. You'll feel more seen, more known, more understood by partaking in that.
And validation is one of the biggest drivers to affairs, which is I want to feel validated. I want to feel heard. I want to feel seen. I want to feel known. I want to feel loved.
Yep. And that's an instrumental component in the Compassion Project is that. So also I want to say something real quick to everyone out there who's still listening along as we wrap this. I have been dreaming for years with my book, The Tree of Life. And I recently finished the audiobook portion of that. And now that that's completed, we're just waiting for the final stages of Amazon to launch that coming up at the end of August. And we're going to go in, share some really cool stories about my journey of creating the book in the coming weeks. But I just want you guys to get that in your head that the audiobook, The Tree of Life, is going to be available in August and to kind of just get it out on your radar
because incredible.
It's been one of the
it is joy to my soul.
Not only was the book one of my favorite things that I've ever done as far as creating, but the audio recording process and what I did being able to take my training from acting and going to film school and then implement it into this. It was like I had this huge journey of college that I was like, will I ever reuse this degree? And then it's come into fruition as I've built this. And I came so alive even more getting to create that process, and even listening to it myself, because I've had to re-listen to it. I feel like I'm not even listening to me. And I'm like, this person is amazing. And I've just had so much fun myself. And I'm excited for people to get to explore that coming up here in August. Oh yeah.
It's actually brought me a lot of hope. The story is so hopeful about the journey that the world is on right now. So, yes, we're so thankful. And listen, if you have had an affair and you've cheated on somebody, I just want to leave you with hating yourself never heals the problem.
No.
Actually going on the journey of forgiving yourself. And this is why I hope you made it through the whole thing, because if you can begin to understand I wasn't having a voice. Oh, I didn't know how to get my needs met. Oh, I felt powerless to this. Oh, I didn't. If you can begin to understand why you did what you did, you can begin to have compassion, and you can learn and grow and become. You can become the person that you want to be.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to encourage you that forgiving yourself, being kind to yourself, and learning and growing. Every single time I was drawn to somebody else, I was kind to myself, and then I did an action to transform my life from it. And that's what you guys can do as well.
Yeah. So rate, review, subscribe, and share.
Send this to all your cheater friends.
And all those who don't want to cheat. But people may need to really hear this.
All the potential candidates that you want to date.
Why did you send this to me? Oh, is this what you think of me?
It really is good to get on the same core value page about this before you choose to marry someone.
Yeah. All right. So thanks for joining us, and goodbye from Montana.